Hello and welcome back. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining in today. Today we have a great show with a great panel as well. So we have five on the panel. That's including me, of course. So I'll be your moderator for today. My name is Terence and I am from LATOKEN. You are now watching VCTV. Now, before we start, just a few housekeeping rules here. Now, if you're watching from YouTube, just do us a favor, hit that like and subscribe button here because it helps us with the algorithms and you will get notified on all the next shows that come about as well. And if you're watching us from our main page itself, remember the schedules are there for you. Go through it, look at the speakers that we have and look at the topics that we are discussing. If you intend to reach out directly to the speakers and to the panels that you see today, again, it's just a click away. All the links will be provided on the page, so take time, do have a look there. Now, today we're going to be talking about biotech, medtech, health tech, telemedicine, that ecosystem itself. And on the panel today, we got the best, the brightest, the greatest minds to share a little bit and discuss on the topic itself. I'll go around and let them introduce themselves first. Marion, over to you. A quick introduction from your end, the company that you represent and where you're from at the moment.
Thanks, Terence. My name is Maren. I'm the CEO of Schweizer World, Schweizer's growth capital and partnership arm here in Southeast Asia. So we are a dinosaur. Our roots go back to 1849, so that's a little bit more than 170 years. We are here now to combine the hardware world, which is our core business, it's automotive electronics, with the digital world, the software world. And I'm based in Singapore since some years, spent my career in aviation, automotive electronics, and venture capital. All started in a startup myself, founded a couple of startups during my career, have been in listed companies, small companies, family business, and MNCs. So what I would like to share with our audience today is the two worlds, the corporate world, let's say the giant, and the startup world.
Great. I think that's a great way to share an experience as well. I'm sure the audience will love it. Vaughn, over to you. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Hi, everybody. This is my first time on VCTV. So glad to be here with this distinguished panel. My name is Vaughn. I'm from Purpose Venture Capital. We are a new early stage venture capital that's based out of Singapore. We're focused in investing in tech for good. What does that mean? We are building early stage tech companies that is focused on solving big social environmental problems. My personal background is that I used to be the former chief digital health marketplace for the public health agency in Singapore government called Integrated Health Information Systems. And I was an ex-IBMer and also worked with Aon as the regional director for North Asia, which is the largest insurance brokerage. So, you know, that intimate payer, payee, user, patient, hospital relationship, I kind of like get it. And so we're very proud to be part of that ecosystem where we could understand what really are the pain points, but also hopefully we can plug some of the gaps in order to come up with some good innovations for the patients as well as clinicians.
Great. Welcome, Vaughn. It's a pleasure having you on the panel today. Karthik, over to you. A quick introduction from your side.
So much, Terence. And as I keep the count, it's 19, show number 19, and
There
it
we
will
go.
get better every day. To give you a quick background, I am a retailer by profession, a ex-CEO of a healthcare company, and today I represent two family offices and two early stage investors, including myself, who've invested in health tech, fintech, e-commerce, and now actively looking at biotech as a category. I also represent a few panels where we evaluate and incubate certain startups, especially in the health tech space. Area of interest, area of investment, primarily telemedicine, robotics, blockchain, a little bit on blockchain, and a little bit on wellness. And
Great.
that's what we're going to talk.
Thank you. Welcome, Karthik. And lastly, Raghu, over to you. An introduction from your side.
Thanks, Terence, and thanks to VCTV for having me. I've been on the US circuit for a long time. I just started, on the Eastern Circuit here. I'm from Princeton, New Jersey. I'm a serial entrepreneur, a business advisor, and mentor. I have a company called Harvesting Enterprises, which helps, companies all the way from seed to harvest. We do strategic planning, execution, all phases, as well as try to get exits. Most recently, I think the current thing is about how to, now that the vaccines are ready, how to get them delivered, and also how to kind of help the kind of global situation to get back to some kind of a normal in terms of public participation. So,
yep. I think we are definitely going to touch a little bit on that. We want to see the military precision that may be seen in the next few months itself. Again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining the panel today. Let's start the show. I think it's important to kind of look at technology since we're talking about biotech, medtech, and such. So let's talk about the technology that matters first. I think we have been suddenly forced into the core of the digital world this year. So let's start the show by looking at the advancements in technology and what you are noticing. Perhaps we can start with you, Maren.
Overall, I would say 2020 has been a real accelerant for many businesses. We are running Schweizer businesses in three verticals. One is electronics, mobility, and digital ecosystems. So we've been seeing that move also in electronics as well as mobility as well as in digital. So from a helicopter perspective, I would say what remains intact is that you need to look out for businesses who have a Benjamin Button effect. And that's about data. So anytime your clients, customers, consumers are using your products, you get more data, you get more insights, and thereby get younger. Maybe some of you know that film, the Benjamin Button. That's the character who's getting younger and again younger. So I would want to use that analogy to describe how we look into what businesses we want to invest in.
Great. Thanks for that. I think we all loved that show and we watched it definitely just for Brad Pitt sometimes, I think. Juan, over to you. What do you see in terms of the advancements in technology? At least what are you noticing within the ecosystem?
I suppose we're still very much excited about AI and the potential, how they activate, predictive analytical abilities for our clinicians, or in terms of both remote management and patient care, and the whole holistic approach from personalized to at-home care. But I also thought to mention about something I'm a bit excited, which is a new trend that has been identified for next year, is the privacy enhancing computation that's going to be enhanced by the advanced use of 5G, cloud, and all of that, because it's essentially three types of technology where it sort of process the technology in a trusted environment, and then it prepare the data before it process and then perform the analytics. In this way, what that means is that people can have access to data without getting access to share data without getting access to the underlying private data. So what that means is that it will encourage more sharing of data. As we know, in order to promote interoperate between hospital systems and software systems, from what we already seen in the COVID situation, such a technology will enhance that sharing of data without getting people to be fearful about, getting access to their own data. So this is the kind of technology we want to see how we can then build on AI, and big data to encourage more either collaboration as well as, making some of these software systems work together in order to deliver a greater benefits for all patients.
I see. Yep. I think you are right. I think both of you are echoing the fact that data is definitely key, and we're seeing that across all sectors as well. Karthik, on your side, what's your take on it, Karthik? Any interesting advancements that you're noticing at the moment?
Yeah, I echo more or less similar sentiments to what the ladies had about the technological advancement. The industry is advanced at least what it should have advanced in 100 years, in 100 days. That's the way I look at it. In terms of the business, we dissect the business a little differently at our houses. In terms of, we divide the business into core healthcare, which is primarily the surgical, the medical, the diagnostic space, and then we divide. But then we look at the periphery, which is where the insurance, the allied services, medical data, data transcription, etc. works, or even the predictive algorithms, AI, ML works. And we see differentiation in terms of growth coming in from both spaces till about 2008 9, or maybe even till around 2016 17. Technology was the only differentiator that healthcare providers and healthcare systems had in the world. So if you have the technology, you are a number one leader. What has happened in last 3 4 years and what has changed significantly in last 6 months is technology became democratized, and it got restricted to the space of being an enabler and not a doer. And medical protocols, diagnostics, allied services, information technology, telemedicine, pharmaceuticals, processes, etc., or the regimen of the diagnostic circuit became that much more prominent, and allied industries started taking over. So while I love the advancement of technology in the robotics, in AI, in image radiation, or even in terms of predictive logics that's likely to help us predict the next big pandemic and prevent it from becoming a pandemic, I believe that significant changes have happened in the blockchain space that is democratizing even the pharmaceutical protocols or supply chain, as Gary always mentions. And more importantly, I look at that helping even build a very strong patient database, decentralized patient database. So I see technology deployment there. But the biggest technological change that I started or we've started banking on is the wearables and the lifestyle space, and the telemedicine and cybermedicine. Telemedicine, cybermedicine was a once in a blue moon, once in a lifetime opportunity for people to engage in case of dire needs. And today, telemedicine has become the largest means of communication in the medical space, far more than any other route deployed in terms of surgical or in terms of non-surgical patient hours that are being consumed. So we continue to bank on that space. That's one. Second, we start believing that technology that used to drive only robotics and surgical procedures at the laparoscope and movement from general surgery to laparoscopic to non-invasive to even laser, so technology has started now moving in the pharmaceutical space. Technology has started becoming more and more democratized in the data stage. So the number of data records that are coming up to build in the continuity and the automation of the data records, that is making it all the more easier for patient care to be globalized rather than patient care to be regionalized, is where we see technology coming in. So I look at the healthcare space and its technology as a slightly more holistic than a purely a functional domain. That's my take on it.
I think that's a great way to look at it as well, no doubt. Raghu, do you share the same sentiments, or what are you
I
looking
think
at? In terms?
Maureen, Vaughan, and Karthik covered a lot of the areas. I wanted to add to that. I think just because of the way that this zero trust environment has happened, people working from home and everything, kind of a lot of data moving, cybersecurity has become very important, and privacy as well. So I think there also, there's been a lot of improvement. But one of the things I have noticed and that I'm personally involved in operationally as well is a company called SplitByte, which is doing what we would call a data vaccine. Cybersecurity approaches have been generally kind of preventive or reactive, and this one provides what is more like a vaccine, where even if there is a system breach, it doesn't translate into a data breach. So the idea is to take data, randomize it, and then kind of bury it into multiple locations. And in the cloud or private or public cloud. So kind of like the Horcrux, in the Harry Potter thing. So you can't just go to one site and get anything. So you have to compromise multiple sites and then know how to kind of put it back together. So that is like it handles a lot of things like insider threats. It handles quantum proofing, as well as it sits on top of encryption. So it's just a much higher layer of encryption. Not encryption, protection, data protection. So that is one that is very different in the cybersecurity space. The other thing, the other kinds of technologies that I'm seeing is this whole kind of antiviral, antimicrobial filtering. There are two companies from India that I'm helping out actually in terms of going to market. One is doing basically filtering for antiviral using what they call PCO technology. And they have like three types of offering. One is for like rooms, that you can put in like a box, or for cars, as well as for HVAC systems, where, they can just put it into because this has become a very important issue, right? We can kind of see how this pandemic has completely required, suddenly a lot of technologies to come to the forefront. Infectious diseases weren't like at the top of the agenda, right? But now this year it's changed the game on that. So I think that is the positive side where money is flowing in. There are others where that are distressed because of the pandemic, but there is also an opportunity there in terms of consolidation. So that's kind of what I'm seeing.
Great. I think you're right. I think most of us have kind of picked up on that as well. I think we have another speaker on the panel today. Anuj, are you there by any chance? Just checking on this. No.
Yes. Hey mate, how are you? Okay. Can you hear me?
Hi Anuj. Again, thanks for joining us. Do quickly do that introduction so that the panel knows that you're here, the audience out there knows as well. And then perhaps you can kind of start by talking about some of the advancements you're seeing in technology, that you're noticing with regards to the topic today.
Sure, absolutely. So quickly introducing myself, my name is Anuj Chauhan. I'm an entrepreneur. I've started 3 startups in the last decade. At present, I'm working as the founder for Yellow Sapphire Technologies and LATOKEN. Along with it, I'm an international partner at World Business Angel Forum, where we work as a global G20 initiative to promote global financial inclusivity and entrepreneurship across the world. I am also working with iAngels in Israel and a family fund based out of Buffalo, New York. Now, to answer your questions about some of the technological advancements, if I was to simply define the MedTech industry right now, we are practically living in an age where the technology that you see available right now we consider nothing less than a miracle when you compare it to the technology available probably just 2 or 3 centuries ago, in just 1700s or 1800s. And that's where it's creating that interesting value proposition. Not only now do you have demands for doctors in medical professionals, but there's also a demand for engineers in every hospital. Not just to set up the operations, not just for hospital operations itself, but also to assist those doctors in their medical practice. Engineers are no longer just working on design prototyping for new medical instruments, but they're actively working with doctors to create new technology that's helping reach out to an audience that's frankly at this moment underserved. Taking an example, just in India, you're talking about a population of 1.3 billion people. And just by the government's own records, 70% of the Indian population only has access to 30% of the healthcare infrastructure. It's mind-boggling, and it's frankly really sad to see that in 2020, because you're witnessing 1 billion plus people in just one country have access to a fraction of healthcare infrastructure. That's a lot of lives that we could save. That's a lot of lives that can be improved upon right now. So the advancements that you see in terms of telemedicine, where more and more outreach is being done, but at the same time, the main advancement that
I think.
feel is
Sorry, we might be losing you there for a while, Anuj. Try to check your internet connection again. Let me just quickly kind of circle back. Sorry, Anuj, we're losing you there. Do check your connection again. Again, I think it's moving. Yeah. Sorry. Just moving on again to the next question. As you know, ladies and gentlemen of the panel today, lots of people that are watching us and on the show today are sort of from that startup, SME, early up and coming entrepreneurs as well. Now, they make a good majority that are watching you today. So we want to also kind of talk about perhaps that partnership models. Perhaps you can talk about that open innovation and how both companies can kind of work together with VCs or work together with mature rather companies in the industry. So let's take that route and talk a little bit on that business model itself. Maren, perhaps this one will start with you.
Yeah, thank you, Terence. Before answering your question and thoughts, I would like to resonate to what we've heard from Karthik. Yes, technology itself is not that much a differentiator anymore. So I think it's very important to think how you position your company in the telemedicine MedTech space as an example. It's more about how do you manage to own the rails. Let's just think of Apple. Apple is owning the rails for their apps because they have the hardware and they can easily deploy it. So I think this is an important topic to think in your business model. How do I own the rails? That might be with partnerships, with hospitals, also with insurances on your HealthTech and MedTech platforms. I think that's a key differentiator. Secondly, I think we will run into a data overflow down the road. So for that, we will need underlying factors. One we've heard already, that is certainly cybersecurity. That's a critical concern from our point of view, but secondly, also we'll have that much data that we will require supercomputers down the road. So there's also technology out there. How do you travel electrons free, fast, with low energy consumption to make that work? Well, a headline would be quantum computing, but there are a lot of technologies out there that can solve that data overflow. So now to partnerships. So our firm has been successful due to progressive partnerships for quite some time. So it's always about two things. It's one, how do we manage to create common value? And secondly, how do we generate IP in a partnership model, which isn't so easy. So this sounds like two headlines, doesn't it? So my advice to everybody in the audience would be, if you look at partnership models, that might be a corporate, that might be an investor, whatever kind of partnership, look at the first viable partner. The first viable partner might not be your ideal partner. It might even not be a good partner for you. Most certainly there is more in for the partner than for you. Just go for it. Having a partner on board will help you generate credibility. And from that credibility, why not move on and add an additional partner where you have more value and so on. So what we also sometimes see in open innovation and partnership models, and that's, I'll come to that now, is that we tend to think too complicated, or partners think too complicated. Already discussing long-term, maybe a joint venture, maybe a strategic partnership, I recommend start with baby steps. Do a small thing first and don't talk so much complicated long-term things to make it happen, and then take it from there.
Great advice. Thank you for that, Marin. Vaughn, over to you. What do you think about the new partnership models that are coming about, or what do you suggest to those up and coming businesses?
Yeah, I agree with Marian. In fact, I'm very glad we talked about that because previously, when I was the decision maker in the public healthcare system, or when I was working with insurers as an insurance broker, I think one of the things that you have to solve the pain points of your customers. So there are three things I observe, right? So the first one is I'm very excited about entrepreneurs that can come to me with very simple, innovative innovations which is plugged into the current system, solving current problems, but it can be easily scaled and modular, and then help me to reduce the complexity, right? So the first one that I'm looking for is really the upstream. So if you can do something that is very simple for me to plug in, like my digital front door to my hospital, my clinic, to how I do my practice, now that is something always useful. And the other one is obviously I have multiple software legacy systems. If you can some way bring all the data, and make it seamless for me, then I'm also excited to talk to you and make my CTO sit up and listen to you. And then finally, it's really about the last mile, be it supply chain, be it the at-home care when we do remote management or disease management. So if you could really focus on coming up with a simple innovation where we can plug in and then it's scalable, modular, then I could see a way for you as an early stage entrepreneur to have a success, in build, because it's a long game, we know, right, in this business. So that relationship can build over time, but definitely you have to solve the immediate problems today. Even though we have accelerated this year in many ways, but the truth is the system is still rather traditional. It is waiting to be disrupted yet. So
Right.
I welcome more of the entrepreneurs contacting us to explore these ideas.
Great. And I'm sure they will. Karthik, over to you with this one as well. Are you noticing any trends at the partnership model stage? And how are people doing it over at your side?
So the entire VC world has changed. In the past, VC world was all about, I have the dollars, come to me with a bright idea and I'm going to shower you with dollars. That world has changed. Today, VCs have become far smarter than what actually the businesses are. And they've prepared an arsenal of tools available. So I'm not going to give you dollars. I'm going to give you an entire ecosystem that's available at my end, which means I might have even technology incubators available. I might have resources. I might have hardware platforms, and I might have software developers also available. So you bring your idea into my premise and let's work together. That's the first way of moving into that ecosystem. Second is, I see a lot of businesses, especially in this space, trying to boil an ocean. Now, I do not expect a 2-member, 3-member business or a startup every day come up with a next level of laparoscopic advancement, which is going to go into a single incision surgery. I don't expect, and I would not want that to be. I would rather want somebody to work on what I call as democratizing this space, because more often than not, the moment you reach a particular threshold, healthcare is across the world still a national subject. So you would be reaching out to federal authorities, you would be reaching out to government authorities, not, I mean, across the world, 85% of the government authorities that you reach out to wouldn't even understand what you're trying to propose. So first you come to an eyeball to eyeball understanding, then make your healthcare protocol or a change that you're trying to bring in affordable. You're not trying to create a health ecosystem for the top 5% of the world, but you're trying to create an ecosystem for the bottom of the funnel, because that is where democratizing a healthcare ecosystem is required. So if your ecosystem is not scalable, if you're trying to give me a $3,000 vaccine, you would create it for 200 celebrities and that's about it. But if you're giving me a $2 vaccine, you reach out to 3.5 billion people who need that. That's one. Second, don't add too many layers. What Juan said is absolutely right. If you create too many layers and you make it exactly like what a Magento 2.7 today is, every 3 months, if I don't update, I am an obsolete dinosaur. Don't create that in the healthcare space, because healthcare service providers and government neither have the time nor the bandwidth nor the priority to upgrade your systems every now and then. So maybe you might make an entry into the space, but you won't last long. Somebody who comes with robust, reliable, rock solid platforms that last for significant time, or a life cycle. Healthcare comes with a life cycle. So one life cycle or two life cycles would find it scalable. And most importantly, do not try to be in the space to make quick buck, because healthcare, irrespective of how smart your idea would be, you might end up at some places losing money to make it more accessible to the masses. And that's how the government's going to play. Regulatory authorities will find way, some or the other way, to block your protocol in certain parts of the country if you try and make it far too capitalistic. And hence that right mix of technology, capitalism, democracy with a human heart around it is the way to operate in the healthcare space. If you are in the core healthcare, if you are in the fancy healthcare or the lifestyle healthcare, as I call it, which is the wearables technology or the lifestyle and wellness space, or into third generation surgical procedures, you have the entire world to reach out to and make the most of the advancements you want to. But if you are in the core healthcare, you need to be that much more governed and that much more mindful. That's the way I see things happening.
Great advice there, and I think that covers quite a bit as well in terms of the models that we look at. Raghu, do you foresee a same method? I mean, coming from your side of the world there?
Yeah, I think what Karthik was saying about the core healthcare, which has really come to the forefront this year just because of the pandemic. And there's a lot of models in terms of how the public sector has engaged in Operation Warp Speed. You can see in the US, for instance, which was amazing in terms of how much energy was spent in going after the vaccine and the therapeutics, as well as all these other things like diagnostic areas, as well as general hygiene, things like antiviral masks and all these kind of things, right? So I think the role of the public sector is very critical in the core healthcare, both in the sense of the open innovation, incubating new technologies that are very needed currently, and then on the other side in terms of the actual deployment in the last mile, as I think Juan was saying. I think both are very critical, and I think there is also a lot of capital has gone in through public-private partnerships in the US. The Health and Human Services has a program called DRIVE, which is for helping innovation. They work with accelerators. They also give direct funding through something called Border Ventures. And I'm sure these similar models are happening around the world. So there is a lot of awareness of that this is time when technologies that are important need to be accelerated, because it's like I think Karthik who said it, in 100 years of advancement we're doing 100 days, right? That's a good way to put it. And you need a lot of capital and a lot of kind of scale up support, and that I think public sector can bring that. So I think that's I'm seeing that, and the fact that we got all these vaccines out, which normally would have taken 3-4 years, compressed in 8 months or whatever, is amazing. So
Right, you're right. I think you're right on the fact that we went digital really fast, really deep as well. Anuj, over to you. Has the partnership model changed drastically, or are we still going back to that traditional roots?
So, let me answer that question with an example. What's the first word that comes to your mind when I say the word big pharma? The answer is that capitalist greed, and that's the simplest way I can define it. For so long, healthcare has been such a complicated sector, and there has been so much cutting in technology that's involved, and so much research that's been involved, where you're spending millions of dollars, and at the end, it's the companies they wanted to make that money. It's not long ago, just 100 years ago, insulin was invented. Right now, it's one of the priciest drug in the world, and the fact remains that the founder of insulin, the one who discovered it, did not actually patent it for one simple reason, so that it can reach a wider audience. that has not historically been happening. And that's where MedTech is changing the game. Just like any other industry, technology is coming in and bringing in innovation that's making advancements and reaching out to an audience wider than ever. That's reaching out to a public at a level cheaper than ever. So not only are now drugs reaching out to a wider audience, like Karthik said, when you have a $2 vaccine, you can reach a more wider audience while still making money. So new companies are changing that status quo. Along with it, like I mentioned, the future of health tech has always been in terms of personalization. We have had targeted cancer therapies since 1970s. Before we even decided to decipher the human genome. The Human Genome Project started in 1990, but the first targeted medicine came in 1970. And that's saying something. That's where you know the future is headed as well. That the soul of broad spectrum drugs and antibiotics, while they have served humanity and then have helped save billions of lives over the last 92 years, the fact remains that for the future, for the 21st century, you would need the scalpel of targeted drugs, targeted medicine, and highly personalized care to actually reach out to the right set of users and to save more lives.
Right. I think you're also point on with that one. And I think it's only timely if we talk about perhaps the last mile deployment and getting all those drugs to the people and to the masses itself. I mean, it's rightly so that we have a pandemic now, but the current pandemic and future pandemics, let's talk a little bit on that diagnostics and vaccine delivery bit. And how can some of the companies, the startups, kind of participate in this ecosystem quickly? I think, Maren, can you give your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's an easy play. Logistics and supply chain is a pretty sophisticated animal at itself. So where we see some sweet spots actually is to offer robotics as a service into supply chain models where things are done manually. That might be a way for startups to look into it and also to pay into from just in time to just in case. So there are so many changes. So I think that's been for all supply chains a very challenging time in 2020 to look into new ways at a fast changing pace. And that's again about data. And the older companies, we all stuck a little bit in legacy systems. So chip in models that can quickly adopt to a changing environment, wherever it may come from, is certainly a USP for startups.
I think you're right. Raghu, over to you. What do you think about the whole vaccine delivery diagnostic ecosystem and how some of the businesses out there can kind of really participate and join in here?
Yeah, I think a lot of the initial, movement was on the diagnostic side, and now it is now since the vaccines are getting approved, now the vaccine deployment has become very important. But connected with the vaccine deployment, the whole cold chain storage and the chain of custody tracking, as well as people being able to show that they were vaccinated. You need a way for. There's an app the Indian government has just announced called COVID, which you can basically show that you're vaccinated, because that would become an important thing for travel and all that. I think at least in the near future, right, until global herd immunity or whatever comes in. So that, but you need the diagnostic piece to go kind of hand in hand, because if you're vaccinated, that's great. If not, you have to either, if you already had COVID, then you can show antibodies. So you need antibody testing. And if that is not the case, and then you need to immediately take what are called rapid tests. See, the whole point of testing, where you get the results, 24 hours or 48 hours later, is meaningless, because in that time that you're waiting, you could, be infected. So the very important thing is to actually have a test that works, in real time, close to real time. And that is now happened finally. There was a lot of these tests which were there. I mean, I think at that time that's the best that could be done. But now a lot of startups, there is actually one called Gaia 17. There are about 300 tests that in the US FDA has approved for diagnostics, but there are only like 10 rapid tests. So there are so many players who got in the game, but now I think the real, the top technologies in terms of speed, accuracy, and cost. Obviously, ultimately, cost is important to reach, the entire population around the world. So I think you're seeing the real innovative solutions now come out, hopefully just in time to kind of help with the vaccine deployment. And I think the other part of it is there are, the framework has to be very similar because there's got to be data sharing, as I think Juan was saying. Because this is not just, the countries have to be able to share within the ecosystem because travel is global, data is flowing globally. So there is one side, there is privacy and, data protection side. The other side is we want seamless exchange. So I think that is another challenge. And I think cybersecurity, again, has been kind of really, really pulled along just because of the stress that has happened in terms of work from home and then all these, as another area that you probably have all heard of is ransomware is going crazy. So that is another, you need a ransomware vaccine actually, because it's really especially affected the health system as well as those elections. Those are the two very critical areas again. But these things have a huge impact, unfortunately. So I think the data side is very important as part of this whole vaccine delivery as well, both in terms of, as I said, the data has to be available because it affects everything, our day-to-day lives in terms of travel, going to school, whatever, so.
Right. You're right on that one as well. I think, Karthik, what can the learnings be and what can the takeaways be for some of the up and coming businesses?
So I would add to what Raghu said. Now that the vaccines are out, we're still talking about 7 billion people, which means 7 into 2, 14 billion vials need to be made available. None of us can put our finger and say this human being needs the vaccine today and the other human being needs tomorrow. And it's going to take 700 days to reach out to the entire world. The challenge is about prioritizing who needs to be, which is where a lot of AI and ML needs to start coming in terms of identifying pockets of occurrence or pocket of medication or pocket of epidemic where the first level of impact, second level of impact, tertiary impact needs to be made. Second, we live in a world where 27% of the medical consumption is counterfeit, and half of that comes in from subcontinent and Africa. Now, by the time Pfizer makes its vaccine, it's democratized to the world. By the time it reaches to the last user on the planet, I'm definitely sure 30-35% of it's going to be counterfeit. So its efficiency, its protocols, its reach, its effectiveness, its side effects, all of it would be monitored in a completely disjoint manner, which is where blockchain needs to start coming in terms of building a very secure funnel from the point of manufacturing to the point of consumption. The entire journey has to be either coded or documented in the manner that transfer of rights, as we call, is sequential and not simultaneous in any manner. More importantly, from a regulatory or compliance point of view, I think this is going to be a first of its kind where government, private, tertiary healthcare, primary healthcare, support services, intergovernment interactions have led to creation of a lot of hybrid models. I am not sure whether government to government support on medical protocols or government to government support on even opening doors for doctors flying in from one part of the world to the other to provide emergency services have come in. So where I see is a lot of collaborative shared service healthcare coming in. In the past, it was about two large organizations in the world make the largest medical equipments and then they need to be shipped across. Today, we have reached in a situation, I was talking to one of the largest healthcare providers where they are already taking trials of robotics and laparoscopic surgery on remote basis, which means certain non-invasive surgeries or certain tertiary surgeries like appendicitis or even bumps and bumps can be taken care through robotics and through remote surgery. So we are seeing a complete change in the supply chain. We are seeing a change in the way medical protocols and surgical protocols are built. We are seeing a change in the government to government interaction. And we are seeing a complete change in the insurance structure, insurance sector coming in, because post-COVID, after everybody has been inoculated once or twice, the insurance regulations are going to change completely, because insurance companies would have led differentially through this last 1 year, with people rampantly going out and claiming insurance on every possible ailment that they would have had to, they would have had to prevent themselves or protect themselves from. So we see changes, and in this stage, where we see investments coming in, and I continue to bank on this and I continue to talk about this because I believe in democratizing the healthcare. The VC that we represent believes in democratizing healthcare, and hence bringing in far better reach and bringing in far better of breaking the disparity is where we would put our money in, and that's where we expect a lot of support to come in.
Yeah, I think you're right. We definitely will get that support for sure. Anuj, quickly from you, where can MedTech, HealthTech, telemedicine, how can the businesses kind of help within this whole vaccine delivery supply chain route?
So the simple answer to that would be in terms of operations. When you're talking about delivery for a vaccine, it's a complicated product. It's not something that can be handled like a usual product. It needs special temperatures for storage, special facilities, requires extra care while delivering from one location to another. So a very key component in setting up the delivery process for the vaccine comes not just in terms of inoculation, but also in terms of reaching out to remote location and setting up the operations in such a way that it can flow smoothly. Another example would be Southeast Asia, not just India, but the entire Southeast Asia. Majority of the population in Southeast Asia are in remote locations where even when you're taking in a product that's stored at minus 90 degrees or minus 37 degrees, you need a way to reach out to audience in such a way that can flow smoothly. So planning things in advance, making sure that you're living up to those plans and moving on with it.
Okay. And I think looking at the time constraints that we have as well, I think we want to talk about the whole future of this industry. And we want to see what telemedicine, cyber medicine, and the usage of data have to bring as well. So let's quickly just go around, and I want to get your thoughts on this. I want to get your thoughts and perhaps your future predictions on what you see. So, Marin, over to you with this one. What's the future of patient care looking like, and that's smart and personalized healthcare?
I think the driver will be open innovation, and looking at that, in partnership models, things go wrong. Literally, that's normal. Partnerships can go sour. So I think to thrive, it's important to look that you have an adult-to-adult relationship from day one. And then whatever USP you can identify for your company, you might want to sit on the back of a giant to see further. So it might be a corporate, it might be a partner, and then there are various opportunities, and I will leave that to my co-panelists to comment on that.
Vaughn, how about yourself? What's the future looking like?
I think Karthi has touched on it quickly just now. I would see a future shift into the hybrid, what I call the care, surveillance, and behaviors model, which is, from the digital front door to all the way to the last mile. So really integrating the whole, how we keep the records, where the different points of care, how we deliver the care, how do we manage and measure, and at the same time getting the insights in order to track behaviors and support the behaviors, be it at home, in the hospital, in the clinics, or outside of that environment, especially if you're in the larger geographic areas, in the urban areas. So, and you have to just like Dr. Marian had talked about, is really open innovation. You got to make sure that happen. But the partnerships are very important. So I'm not surprised where you have the big corporates that come in, like Amazon. They want to come in because they might have more points that they will touch points. I'm not surprised if in future we have to partner with digital banks and of course utilities providers and telecom providers a bit more in order to touch the end users. But of course, I would like us to see a stronger partnership with the insurers because at the end of the day, they are going to have to rewrite the whole system along in order to make sure that democratizing of care is delivered, for the whole of our people, promoting inclusive care for all. So I'm very supportive of what also Kathy has talked about.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we're almost echoing similar points, especially on the main key parts there. Raghu, yourself, give us your thoughts and what you see the future of this smart and personalized healthcare section.
Yeah, I think the issue that is kind of being fleshed out is how the personal touch can work in a contactless setting, which is what it's coming up. And some of these changes that are happening will stay post-pandemic just because it becomes more efficient and more less expensive as well. And so we used to have kind of inpatient, outpatient, and at home. Right now, this whole category of contactless telemedicine is, I think, getting almost equal importance. Which before it was more on the periphery in terms of innovation, but now it's become a necessity. So I think a lot of attention is coming there, and I think AR and VR, which was which was very hot before the pandemic, but kind of took a little bit of back burner and is now kind of going to come back strong because some of these behaviors and practices from this contactless type of setting are going to continue because, as you know, even the same is happening with people working from home, right? So some of that is going to continue, and I think we will see better models where a lot of the stuff is just done in a telemedicine way, but that needed a change to the kind of things, data and communication channels that you needed. For instance, you need the expert advice. You need, the like cameras and things like that. There's the different channels. If you try to do it all through one channel, it just wasn't working. And those things are being fleshed out. And I see a lot of excitement happening in that space in telemedicine.
Definitely. I think we do like that being highlighted as well. Karthik, over at your end, what do you think the future is looking like and what should some of the businesses really look into?
So, future, like all the panelists said, is very bright for remote and contactless surgical procedures. Future is also right for low bandwidth, low capital, data driven, intelligence driven healthcare. And I would say future is very bright for a movement of healthcare from the curative space, from curative to preventive to wellness to lifestyle. Healthcare is becoming that much more broad spectrum rather than being a curative space. Future is also changing primarily in terms of the technology that comes in terms of the wearable space or in terms of remote sensing or the data driven predictive logics that are coming in. But more importantly, I see developments happening at two ends. Large hospitals are pumping in millions of dollars to stay competitive and to drive that insurance claims and patient care bills that keeps them necessarily afloat, which is the need of the hour for them. The moment they lose their innovation bandwagon, their bills would not be able to pay for the kind of expenses that they make for survival. So they'll break you, they'll bust, and they'll be out of business. But at the other end, I see a lot of people who come up with ideas and now pooling in with medical practitioners and becoming small thriving ecosystems or niche ecosystems to bring in solution based healthcare rather than a generic healthcare. So there is an alternative medicine healthcare that somebody is coming in with. There is an imaging healthcare solution that somebody is coming in. There's a doctor at call healthcare services that are coming in. There are medical medicine supplement or what we call as a drug supplement or drug replacement therapies that are coming in. So I see those becoming far more vibrant, and those mushrooming a little too often, or much more than what I see primary healthcare growing in. But in terms of the space, I would say that it's still very early and very nascent, and businesses and businesses and startups need to come up now with so many ideas on the table. Businesses and startups need to come up with an idea that is very scalable, very inclusive, and very far reaching.
You're right. Anuj, are you still with us? Okay. So we want to get your thoughts and what the future looks like. Perhaps you can take this one.
So, talking in terms of future, I honestly cannot emphasize this enough in terms of personalization. Uh, it's easy to think that when you have medical devices which now monitor your heartbeat, your oxygen levels, and even if you have fallen or are unable to respond in a situation at your wristwatch, it's easy to question where do we go from here. The answer to that would very simply be personalization, not just in terms of how situations are being addressed or how medicines are being delivered, but in terms of how we are taking care of each other. When you take situations like type 1 diabetics, for them, it's not a matter of if they will ever be in a hypoglycemic incident, it's a matter of when that's going to happen. And anyone who has ever known any type 1 diabetic understands that when your blood sugar falls below a certain level, you will be unable to respond to the situation. How you address that, how you manage that patient at that point in time, it all requires a very hyper personalization at a level that has not yet been achieved by most medtech companies or by most medical service providers. As of this moment, the onus of care is always on the patient. If you have a condition, you have to take care of yourself. You have to make sure that you are following up your appointments, you're booking it all on time, you're getting your doctor's appointment on time. A company or a solution that can come in at this moment that can offer that level of personalization to the patient would be a winner for me. An example would be something sort of Alexa, a conversation engine. It's easy to imagine a life without Alexa, but it makes our life all the more easy. Likewise, a similar conversation engine coming up that can help us keep track of our health records, keep track of our medical history. That is something that's going to be very important, because post-pandemic we will see a very huge rise in terms of comorbidities and people maintaining their records more and more. An easy way to do that is, of course, by digitization. So any solution that's managing it is probably the future.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And just looking at the time itself, we have a few minutes to sum it up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around the panel again. Do let us know what you think about VCTV and what are your advice for those businesses within the industry. Marion, we'll start with you.
Well, VCTV is a good example of change. So trying to make things better than they were yesterday. We're having different perspectives, and I think that's what our audience appreciates. So looking at the business, a takeaway would be, and this also refers what we've heard before, is think about combining it into a user experience. So I would recommend that you develop a subscription model and bundle it. Just think like Indonesia. In Indonesia, you might not have a health insurance, you might not even have a bank account, you might not have a credit card. So how do you deal with health issues if in your little village on whatever island you are on, there is no doctor anymore? So here AI certainly plays in to give you the first advice with all the data that can be collected on a platform. But this doesn't really help you further. You need to have your clinics, you need to have your doctors. You also want to have your hospitals on your platform, probably run their operational system, their accounting system, back it up with an insurance. And all the data that is generated is so interesting for the insurance industry also, because you have to work on risk modeling and can also think on use-based insurances.
Okay, thank you for that, Marion. Vaughn, over at your side, Any last
Um,
pointers?
I think, Terence, thanks for inviting me to BCTV. For me, I think this is a great platform. It almost illustrates what I feel the healthcare industry should promote: transparency, trust, and access. You know, in that sense, to sum it up, when we do that, when we get closer to, we can then promote global deals, syndication, global partnerships. We can also encourage people to share information, insights, and that will also help to produce a more healthy healthcare ecosystem.
Thank you. Thank you, Vaughn. Raghu, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on VCTV. I think echo what Vaughn was saying. This is part of the democratization of, not just healthcare. I think in all areas of technology, I think it's the pandemic has given a chance to come up with platforms like this, because I think we need these to really reach globally, because this is one case where everybody's being affected equally wherever you are in the world. And so that, I think, has brought an urgency. And platforms like this, I learned so much just from our co-panel members and the moderators on so many topics. And I think it filters through ultimately, I think governments are trying to kind of figure out how to work together while you have to take care of your particular country, but it is not just you. It's everybody. It's all about how it's not just protecting yourself. It's about how you protect others, especially as the elderly got the brunt of the problem early on. So while the youth may not understand initially, now everybody knows we're all connected, right? That's brought this has brought that awareness closer. And BCTV is doing a great job of continuing that awareness all over.
Thank you, Raghu. Thank you for that. Karthik, last points from your side.
So yeah, thank you so much for making this happen. I think in last so many months, maybe you would have helped a lot of startup entrepreneurs at least get confident enough to reach out to people, put the thoughts on the table, and be a little more structured. They were waiting for somebody to reach out to them. Today, they're confident enough. They know whom to reach out to. One particular case I want to talk about here, and I wouldn't take more than a minute, is an example of hyper-personalization in healthcare that we are sponsoring. And I would love to see a lot more cases. So through your TV, I want to reach out to people who are interested in hyper-personalization. Stem cell, 3 years ago, was typically anywhere between $4,500 to $70,000 to see, at least to identify and predict 12 ailments. Today we work with ailments or with startups that are able to create, I would say, replicate certain protocols which are able to bring down those ailments at a cost of anywhere between $27 to $40, and has already started working in Africa and in Indonesia. So anybody who wants to work in stem cell or in preventive medical cure, we are more than happy to sponsor them.
Great. Anuj, sum up the show for us.
Certainly, mate. So, sharing my final thoughts, I would say that VCTV has made one platform which has helped people get more understanding at a deeper level. We are in a phase where no one could go out. So any education, any mentoring that we could get from smart people in the industry, like the panel that we have, is valuable. And I personally am a believer that one should forever be a learner. So I think I'm grateful to learn and humbled to be on a panel with such intelligent people. It's truly been a wonderful experience.
Great. Thank you. And again, ladies and gentlemen of the panel, thank you for your insights and thoughts. It's been great having you here. I'm sure the people out there watching would have really benefited from this one. Again, I would like to thank you and say goodbye. Come back on the next show.
Thank you so much, people. Have a lovely day. Cheers.